And this commenter says, tell me what's so wrong with Trump. Hell, Joe doesn't even know where he is. Okay, I'll tell you. But I'm only gonna hit the tip of the iceberg. Are you ready? First, he has a long history of fraud and shady business practices in New York long before he got elected. He would hire foreign workers, like from Poland, for his buildings and then not pay them and say, yeah, you can't sue me, you're not from here, fuck off. He has a long history of racism, like calling for the execution of the Central Park Five even after they were exonerated, even 20 years after they were exonerated. Or making Holocaust oven jokes to groups of Jewish businessmen, calling Mexican immigrants rapists and criminals, starting the birther conspiracy about Barack Obama because he's black. He was sued by the Department of Justice for racial housing discrimination and settled out of court. He called South American countries shitholes. He constantly used white national phrases like, quote, poisoning the blood of our country. He called white supremacists very fine people. He sleeps with Hitler's fucking book on his night table. He tried to ban Muslims from the United States. He separated children from their parents at the border, hundreds of whom went missing and have never been found. He threw paper towels at hurricane victims. He wanted to nuke a hurricane. He doctored a hurricane forecast map with a black Sharpie to pretend he hadn't been wrong about it. He still sends pictures of his hands circled with black Sharpie to a magazine author who called him a short-fingered vulgarian decades ago. He's cheated on every wife he's ever had. He pardoned a sheriff that was in prison for extreme racial profiling, torture, and extreme degradation of Hispanic inmates. He pardoned Blackwater war criminals who murdered and tortured innocent Iraqi and Afghani citizens. He withheld personal protective equipment during COVID and let hundreds of thousands of Americans die because he hoped it would make his political opponents look bad. But he stole PPE for himself to keep himself safe. He once asked if we could just inject bleach to fight COVID. He tried to withhold approved aid to Ukraine unless they would fabricate evidence against his political opponents. He demanded personal oaths of loyalty to himself from government workers. He sold government appointments for money. He completely violated the emoluments clause and enriched himself at government expense. He stayed in his own hotel properties and charged 10 times the going rate for rooms for his security detail that was required to stay there because he was staying there. He appointed his children and relatives to high-paying government positions. He killed net neutrality, he tried to shut down the EPA, he ended dozens of environmental protections, including ones for drinking water. He cut budgets for low-income housing projects except for ones he was involved in and would make money off of. He raped women. He was found guilty in civil court of doing so, and lying about it. He settled out of court with a woman who said he raped her on Epstein's Island when she was 13 years old. Once, when an interviewer asked him what he had in common with his daughter, he said he wished he could say sex, but people would think that's wrong, so I guess golf. He said one of the best perks of running a Teen USA pageant was he could walk into their dressing rooms when they were changing and no one could do anything. He said he admires Putin, Oban, and Kim Jong-un. Now, I know this commenter, and he thinks Justin Trudeau's a dictator for saying he admired China's ability to turn their economy around. So why do you like Trump when he has outright said he admires actual dictators? He has an Adderall and Xanax addiction, according to White House staff who said their drugs were being given out like candy during his time there. He wears diapers and shits himself because of that drug addiction. And no, you cultists, real men don't wear diapers. Stop wearing that idiotic t-shirt. He started a trade war with China. He kind of tried to start one with Canada and the US, but was vastly outmaneuvered by Chrystia Freeland. Ooh, that one's got a sting for you, doesn't it? He had DC police tear gas and violently assault protesters to clear an area outside of a church so he could take a photo op of himself with an upside-down Bible. He publicly supported Putin over U.S. intelligence services. He met with Putin in private 5 times without anyone else there, and then changed U.S. policy shortly after that directly benefited Russia, like pulling out of Syria, or ending sanctions on Russian companies, or pulling out of the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Treaty, which then made it legal for Russia to start building intermediate-range nuclear weapons. He tried to sell nuclear arms technology to Saudi Arabia, but thankfully was stopped by Congress. Then he took home a ton of classified information, including nuclear secrets. And he lost them. Not coincidentally, his son-in-law was then given $20 billion from Saudi Arabia for an investment firm that he had just opened and had no experience in, even though Saudi's financial planners and bankers told the prince it was a terrible idea. I wonder why he did it. Who could know? Trump then refused to turn over classified information to the government when requested, finally when it was seized, said it was all of it, and then over a year later even more was found. Wonder who he sold that to. He weaponized the Department of Justice against multiple political opponents, but also against regular bureaucrats and even FBI agents who were just doing their job and didn't support him. He outright said if he wins again, he will be a dictator on day one and fire anyone who ever wronged him. Oh, and Project 2025, which is, a straight-up declaration that they're going to end democracy if he wins. And finally, last but not least, he tried to overthrow an election. He tried to incite a riotous insurrection after ordering metal detectors be removed from the area. He tried to subvert the election process and get state governors and state electors to lie for him or fabricate votes for himself. And honestly, that's not even half of what he's done. But this video is already 6.5 minutes long.